Beloved, I invite you to rest in the presence of truth as we embark upon a sacred journey together. For in this moment, there is no need to reach, to strive, or to chase after answers. You see, much of what we have believed, much of what we have done in the name of healing, in the name of seeking, has been based on the premise that we must do something in order to attain the life we desire, the peace we seek. And yet, there is something far greater than our mental activity, something that exists before thought, before words, before human effort, and that is the silence of the divine presence. Let us pause for a moment, and in that pause, acknowledge something profoundly important. The most sincere of us have prayed, have meditated, have struggled with the deepest of our desires, and yet the answers seem elusive. Why is this? Why, despite all our striving and speaking, does peace often seem to evade us? The reason is simple. We have not yet realized that words, no matter how well-intentioned, cannot lead us to the truth we seek. There comes a point, beloved, in our spiritual journey when we must come to the realization that words, as precious as they may be, eventually fall short. They become tools of the mind that can only reach us so far. Words, whether in affirmations, prayers, or even in scriptures, are vehicles that guide us to the edge of understanding, but they do not carry us over. It is the inner realization, the quiet, deep recognition of the divine presence within us that leads us to healing. The moment we cease our mental chatter and simply recognize that God is here in this very moment, as this very moment, we begin to enter into the sacred stillness that is the true healing power. In the Gospel of John, we hear the words of Jesus, "The Father and I are one," John 10:30. This simple yet profound declaration is not merely a statement of theological importance. It is a statement of absolute truth. Christ did not need to strive or struggle. He was aware of the Father within him. And so it is with us. In truth, the only power in existence is the power of God, and when we recognize that power, we no longer need to labor in words. We rest in the truth that I am as God declared to Moses in the burning bush, Exodus 3:14. The fullness of all that exists in this very moment, and we, like Christ, can rest in it. But we do not rest in this truth casually or thoughtlessly. It is not a matter of simply saying that God is with us. No, this is the moment of profound recognition. God is with us, not merely beside us, not somewhere in the future or in the past, but here, now, in us. This is the eternal reality that we are invited to experience and live from, not through the work of words, but through the stillness of the soul. Too often, we are swept away by the urgency of life, by the demands of our material world, by the swirling thoughts of our minds. Yet, within each of us lies the divine silence, the silence that is not empty, but full of all possibilities. It is a silence of the soul that has no need to speak, because it knows all things. It is here that healing occurs. It is not in the loud words, the repeated prayers, or the affirmation of conditions. Healing is found in the quiet recognition that the divine presence is already fully expressed within us. You see, beloved, God has already provided all things before they call, I will answer, Isaiah 65:24. The problem is not that God is withholding anything from us, but that we are not yet quiet enough to hear the answer. We do not need to make God act on our behalf. We do not need to compel God to come to us. The question is, are we willing to enter into that silence where all things are already known, where the mind can rest in the presence of the I Am? As we move into the deeper parts of this truth, let us hold this quiet space in our hearts. Let us embrace the fact that our healing does not come from our striving or even from our understanding. Healing comes from the stillness, the silence, the deep acknowledgement of the truth that is already established in God. The words we speak are simply pointers leading us to the stillness of that recognition. And in that stillness, all things are made whole. Now, beloved, having come to this point of stillness, we are prepared to see something that has been hidden in plain sight. For many years, sometimes for a lifetime, we have approached healing, prayer, and even spiritual living from an assumption so universal that it is rarely questioned. That assumption is this, that the trouble lies in the condition, and that the work must therefore be done upon the condition. Whether the condition appears as disease, lack, fear, sin, loneliness, or failure, the human mind immediately goes to work upon the appearance. Even when we are spiritually trained, even when we speak the language of truth, we often do the same thing under a different name. We say we are treating, we say we are affirming, we say we are denying error, but all the while our attention is fastened upon the condition. And this, my friends, is the great mistake. Jesus never treated a condition. He never addressed disease as something to be fixed, nor sin as something to be overcome, nor death as something to be reversed. He looked straight through appearances and rested in what he knew. And what he knew was this: I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. John 5:30. Now consider this carefully. If the Father within is doing the works, then what is left for us to do? Certainly not to battle appearances, certainly not to struggle against conditions, certainly not to wrestle with symptoms, either physically or mentally. Our only work is to abide in the recognition of the presence. The human mind believes that conditions have causes. It asks, why did this happen? What thought produced this? What belief created this? And so the search begins, an endless search into the realm of effects. But Spirit reveals something entirely different. Spirit reveals that the cause of all discord is not personal thinking, not individual wrongdoing, not even wrong belief in the ordinary sense, but universal belief, what we have called universal hypnotism. The world mind, the collective belief of humanity, operates like a suggestion accepted without question. You are born, you grow, you struggle, you decline, and you die. Bodies break down, supply is limited, health must be maintained. These are not truths. They are assumptions. They are not laws of God. They are agreements of human belief. And the tragedy is not that they exist, but that we unconsciously accept them as reality. Scripture tells us, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Notice that it does not say fix the world, nor does it say correct the body. It says be transformed. Transformation does not occur at the level of conditions. Transformation occurs at the level of consciousness. When we try to heal a condition, we are admitting, without realizing it, that the condition has power, presence, and reality. We may say with our lips, God is the only power, but if our attention is riveted on disease, lack, or fear, then that condition has already been given a throne in consciousness, and whatever occupies consciousness governs experience. This is why so many sincere students grow weary. They know the truth. They can quote it. They can repeat it fluently. But they are exhausted from fighting shadows. They are attempting to awaken from a dream by rearranging the furniture in the dream. And no matter how beautifully the furniture is arranged, it is still a dream. The Christ message does not come to improve the dream. It comes to awaken us from it. Why reason ye in your hearts? Jesus asked Luke 5:22. Why indeed? Why analyze, explain, justify, condemn, or fear that which has no divine authorization to exist? Why give reality to that which God did not create? I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel, he said, not because someone believed harder, but because someone saw differently. The moment we cease treating conditions and begin recognizing consciousness, something extraordinary happens. The burden lifts. The struggle dissolves. The sense of personal responsibility for making things right fades away. And in its place comes a quiet assurance, not that we are doing the right work, but that God is. This is why silence is so essential. In silence, conditions lose their voice. In silence, appearances are stripped of their authority. In silence, the soul remembers what has always been true. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Habakkuk 2:20. Silence is not indifference. Silence is not denial. Silence is recognition. It is the acknowledgement that reality does not need our assistance. It only needs our consent. And so, beloved, we begin to see that healing is not an act, not a process, not a method. It is the natural result of consciousness aligned with truth. When consciousness is lifted above the level of appearances, appearances rearrange themselves without effort, without struggle, and without explanation. The flesh profiteth nothing, Jesus said. It is the spirit that quickeneth. John 6:63. Flesh appearance condition profits nothing. Spirit consciousness awareness is the life giver. And until this is seen, truly seen, the student will continue to labor where no labor is required. But once it is seen, once even a glimpse is caught, the whole direction of spiritual work changes. One no longer asks, how do I fix this? One asks only, am I resting in the truth of being? And that single shift opens the door to a healing that is effortless, wordless, and permanent. Beloved, at this stage of the journey, I must speak plainly, though gently, for what is revealed here explains the quiet fatigue that many sincere students feel but rarely voice. There comes a time when even truth rightly spoken, beautifully worded, and accurately memorized becomes a burden. Not because truth fails, but because the use of truth by the human mind eventually reaches its limit. Many of you have come far. You have studied deeply. You know the principles. You can say with confidence that God is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. You know that evil has no power, that disease has no law, that supply is spiritual. And yet, when a crisis arises, when pain appears, when fear knocks, something in you tightens. The mind goes immediately to work. It begins to marshal truth. It begins to speak sometimes aloud, sometimes silently, but always urgently. And after a while, you feel tired. This weariness is not failure. It is not backsliding. It is not lack of faith. It is the signal that you are standing at the threshold of a higher unfoldment. you are discovering, perhaps for the first time, that mental truth is not spiritual realization. The mind, even when trained in truth, is still mind. It still operates in time. It still argues. It still reacts. It still believes it must do something to bring about a result. And so it takes truth and turns it into a tool. It says, if I affirm correctly, long enough, deeply enough, something will change. But this very effort betrays the hidden belief that God is not yet present, that harmony is not yet established, that truth must be activated. Jesus never activated truth. He bore witness to it. I know whence I came and whither I go, he said, John 8-14. That knowing was not mental certainty. It was spiritual awareness. And from that awareness flowed authority, not authority over people or conditions, but authority over appearances. He did not use God. He rested in God. Here is where the mental approach falters. The mind tries to reach God through correct statements, but God is not reached. God is recognized. God is not persuaded. God is revealed. When the mind takes charge of truth, it inevitably begins to measure results. It watches the body. It checks circumstances. It listens for improvement. And the moment it does this, it is stepped back into the realm of effect. It is no longer abiding in consciousness. It is monitoring appearances. This is why the letter of truth, when clung to, can become oppressive. Paul saw this clearly when he wrote, "The letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life," 2 Corinthians 3-6. The letter, no matter how correct, kills when it is used as a substitute for spirit. It exhausts the seeker because it demands continual effort. It requires constant vigilance. It never allows rest. But Christ consciousness is rest. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest, Jesus said, Matthew 11:28. He did not say, come unto me and learn better techniques. He said, rest. Rest from what? Rest from the burden of self-improvement, from the strain of spiritual performance, from the endless effort to make something happen. This is where many students hesitate. There is a subtle fear here. If I stop affirming, if I stop treating, if I stop thinking truth, will I lose ground? Will things fall apart? Will the condition worsen? And this fear reveals the last stronghold of personal sense, the belief that I am responsible for maintaining harmony. But the moment you see that harmony is not maintained by you, but revealed through you, the fear dissolves. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46-10. Notice that knowing follows stillness. It does not precede it. As long as the mind is active, calculating, declaring, defending, it cannot know. Knowing is a function of consciousness, not intellect. This does not mean that truth statements are wrong. They have their place. They lead us out of ignorance. They purify thought. They prepare the ground, but they are not the harvest. And if we try to live on preparation alone, we starve. The infinite way reveals that the mind has no power, neither good nor bad. Power belongs to spirit alone. And the moment this is accepted, not merely believed, the struggle ends. One no longer tries to hold truth. One becomes receptive to truth holding him. At this point, the student stops asking, what should I think? And begins to ask, can I listen? He stops trying to reach God and begins to notice that God has never been absent. He ceases mental manipulation and enters spiritual receptivity. This is the holy ground where shoes must be removed, not because thought is sinful, but because it cannot tread here. This is the place where words grow quiet, where effort dissolves, and where the presence reveals itself without announcement. And it is here, only here, that healing without words becomes possible. Beloved, when we speak of silence, we must be very careful, for silence has been misunderstood more than almost any other aspect of the spiritual path. To the human mind, silence sounds empty. It sounds passive. It sounds like doing nothing. And because the human mind has been trained from childhood to believe that nothing happens unless something is done, silence is often feared, avoided, or misunderstood. But the silence of which we speak is not the absence of activity. It is the absence of personal activity. It is not a void. It is a fullness. It is not a shutting down of awareness. It is an awakening to a deeper level of awareness. When Elijah stood on the mount, we are told that the Lord was not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in the still small voice. 1 Kings 19:12. That voice was not sound. It was not speech. It was not language. It was recognition. It was the awareness of presence. This is the silence that heals. Silence is the moment when the mind ceases its effort to reach God and instead consents to God's presence. It is the moment when truth is no longer spoken at a problem, but allowed to reveal itself as reality. It is not a technique that we practice. It is a state of being that dawns when effort ends. Many have tried to enter silence by forcing the mind to stop thinking. This cannot succeed because the very effort to stop thought is itself thought. Silence does not come by suppression. It comes by surrender. It comes when the mind, having exhausted its strategies, quietly steps aside. Jesus never instructed anyone to silence their thoughts. He simply lived from a place where thought was not in command. I speak not of myself, he said, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. John 14:10. In that statement is revealed the entire secret of healing without words. Notice this carefully. The Father within does the works, not the affirmations, not the declarations, not the correct understanding. The works are done when the personal sense yields. Silence, then, is not something we create. It is something we allow. It is what remains when the urge to fix, correct, change, or improve has been relinquished. In that silence, appearances are no longer consulted for permission to be healed. The body is no longer watched. The condition is no longer monitored. Consciousness has turned away from effect and returned to cause. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. Not in effort, not in argument, not in vigilance, in quietness. This is why healing so often occurs when the mind stops working on it. Many have experienced this without understanding it. They stop praying because they are tired. They give up because they are discouraged, and suddenly improvement appears. It was not giving up that healed them. It was the cessation of mental interference. When the mind releases its grip, spirit reveals what has always been true. Now, let us be very clear. Silence is not indifference to suffering. Silence is not ignoring human need. Silence is the deepest form of compassion, because it refuses to give reality to that which God did not ordain. Silence does not deny that a condition appears. It denies that the appearance has authority. He sent his word and healed them, Psalm 107-20. That word is not language. That word is logos, divine consciousness expressing itself. It is not spoken by us. It is spoken through us when we are still. In this silence, something happens that cannot be explained but can be recognized. There is a sense of assurance, not excitement. A sense of peace, not emotion. A sense of rightness, not relief. And this assurance does not say the problem is gone. It says there never was a power apart from God. This is the inner click that many have spoken of, the moment when seeking stops, not because the answer has been found, but because the question has dissolved. One no longer asks, will this be healed? One knows without words that God is, and where God is, discord cannot remain. Silence is the altar where the false sense of self is laid down. It is where the belief in personal responsibility dies. It is where the old self, striving and fearful, yields to the Christ self that has never been absent. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Zechariah 4-6. Silence is the acknowledgement of that Spirit. It is the consent to divine operation. From this point forward, healing is no longer something we attempt. It is something we witness. We do not direct it, we behold it. And the more often we enter this silence not to get something, but to rest in what is, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it is no longer an experience we visit. It is the atmosphere in which we live. Beloved, having come this far, we do not proceed by adding anything. We proceed by letting go. For now the way opens not through understanding, but through consent. Not through effort, but through yielding. And so I ask nothing of you at this moment except willingness. Willingness to rest. Willingness to listen. Willingness to be still. There is nothing that must be healed right now. There is nothing that must be changed. There is nothing that must be improved. The belief that something must happen in order for you to be at peace is itself the veil that hides peace. And so we gently lay that belief aside. The psalmist tells us, be still and know that I am God. Notice that stillness comes first. Knowing follows. And that knowing is not mental knowing. It is not the knowing of facts or doctrines. It is the knowing that comes when the soul recognizes its own source. Let us then rest not as bodies resting, not as minds resting, but as awareness resting in itself. Do not try to reach God. God is not distant. Do not try to feel something special. Truth is not emotional. Do not try to silence thought. Thought will quiet itself when it is no longer obeyed. Simply acknowledge, very gently, very quietly, that God is present. I am that I am, saith the Lord. Not I will be, not I was. I am, present, complete, fulfilled. Let that be enough. If a thought arises, do not resist it. Let it pass as a cloud passes across the sky. The sky does not struggle with the cloud. It does not analyze it. It does not try to remove it. It remains what it is. And so do you. For in him we live and move and have our being. You are not entering God. You are noticing where you have always been. There is no you here trying to contact God and no God there responding. There is only being, one life, one presence, one consciousness, appearing as awareness itself. Rest there. If the mind asks, is this working? Gently smile. and let the question dissolve. Silence does not work. Silence reveals. It reveals that nothing has ever been absent. Nothing has ever been broken. Nothing has ever been outside of divine care. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That secret place is not a location. It is consciousness, withdrawn from appearances and resting in truth. Do not look for results. Do not scan the body. Do not check the condition. These habits belong to the old sense of self that believed it was responsible for outcomes. You are not here to manage life. You are here to witness life revealing itself. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. This peace is not relief after struggle. It is the peace that comes before struggle ever begins. Let yourself feel the weight of responsibility fall away. Let the burden of personal doership be lifted. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. You were never meant to carry the universe on your shoulders. In this quiet recognition, there may come a sense of assurance, or there may come nothing at all. Do not judge either. God does not announce himself with signs and wonders to the human senses. He reveals himself as calm certainty, as quiet confidence, as an unshakable sense that all is well even before appearances agree. This is not faith in a future outcome. This is awareness of present reality. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Not I will not want. I shall not want now. In this moment, in this stillness, remain here as long as there is no urge to leave. And when the urge comes, do not resist that either. Silence is not something we cling to. It is something we return to again and again until it becomes the natural ground of being. And when you rise from this recognition, whether in this moment or later, you will find that nothing has changed, and yet everything is different. The world may look the same, but you will not be looking from the same place. This is healing without words, not because words are wrong, but because they are no longer necessary. Truth has spoken itself. Beloved, when one has tasted even faintly the silence of recognition, something irreversible takes place. It is not dramatic. It is not emotional, but it is decisive. The reliance upon methods begins to loosen, not because they have been condemned, but because they are no longer needed. For many years, the student leans upon practices. There are treatments, affirmations, denials, prayers spoken morning and night. These serve their purpose. They discipline thought. They lift consciousness out of gross materialism. But there comes a moment, quiet, unmistakable, when the soul no longer reaches for a formula. It listens. My sheep hear my voice, Jesus said, and I know them and they follow me. John 10:27. Notice that he did not say, my sheep repeat my words. He said, they hear. Hearing is not mental repetition. Hearing is receptivity. Hearing is awareness. The inner voice does not speak in sentences. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It does not explain itself. It reveals. It makes itself known as clarity, as peace, as a direction that carries its own authority. And when this voice is heard, methods fall away naturally, not because they are forbidden, but because they would only interfere. At this stage, the student begins to see that guidance is not something added to life. It is life itself revealing its own order. One does not ask incessantly, what should I do? one becomes still enough to recognize what is already being done through them. This is why the infinite way has no techniques to impose, no rituals to demand, no ceremonies to maintain. Its entire foundation rests upon one simple, profound truth. God is, and God appears as individual consciousness. When this is recognized, guidance is spontaneous. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs 3-6. Acknowledge, not beg, not plead, not manipulate. Acknowledge. Recognition is the key that opens every door. The inner voice never urges. It never pressures. It never frightens. If a direction comes with anxiety, it is not spirit. If a thought carries fear, haste, or compulsion, it has arisen from personal sense. The voice of God is gentle, firm, and peaceful. Even when it leads into unfamiliar territory, it carries no strain. Here, another fear often arises. If I stop planning, will my life fall into chaos? This fear again reveals the belief that order is personal, but order is divine. It has always been divine. The planets do not consult charts before moving. The seasons do not deliberate before changing. And you, as the expression of divine intelligence, do not need to orchestrate your life. When he giveth quietness, who then can make trouble? Job 34-29. When consciousness is settled in God, confusion loses its foundation. From this point forward, spiritual work is no longer something set aside for special hours. It becomes the undercurrent of daily life. Decisions are not made from fear or desire, but from a sense of rightness. Words are spoken not to impress or defend, but because they arise naturally. Even silence becomes expressive. This is what Paul meant when he said, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Galatians 2:20. The personal sense does not disappear. It becomes transparent. It becomes an instrument rather than an authority. And healing now occurs without effort. One does not think about it. One does not watch for it. One does not claim it. It happens as naturally as light dispels darkness. When a curtain is drawn back, there is no struggle between light and darkness. Darkness simply is not. So too with discord. When the inner voice governs consciousness, appearances adjust without announcement, bodies respond, circumstances rearrange, relationships soften, supply flows. And yet none of this is sought. These are effects, not objectives. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. Added not, manufactured, not forced, not achieved. Added, beloved, when the inner voice replaces all methods, life becomes simpler, not easier to the human sense, perhaps, but lighter. There is less effort, less resistance, less fear. One walks through the world not as a struggler seeking help, but as a witness to grace. And from this place, silence is no longer something you enter, it is something you carry. Beloved, it is important that we now understand something very clearly. What has been revealed to us is not an experience to be visited and then left behind. It is not a moment of peace set apart from the rest of life. It is not a spiritual exercise reserved for quiet hours. What has been opened is a way of living The temptation, always, is to think that silence belongs to meditation, that recognition belongs to prayer, and that the rest of the day belongs to human effort. But this division is itself the last remnant of personal sense. The Christ life does not come and go, it abides. Pray without ceasing, Paul tells us, 1 Thessalonians 5:17. He was not instructing us to speak continuously to God. He was pointing to a state of consciousness, an inner attentiveness in which awareness never departs from the presence. This is prayer without words. This is communion without form. Living this way does not require withdrawal from the world. It requires withdrawal from reaction. The world will still present appearances. News will still report trouble. Bodies will still register sensation. Circumstances will still shift. But the difference lies here. Consciousness no longer descends into the appearance to wrestle with it. You learn gradually and gently to pause. Before responding, you pause. Before deciding, you pause. Before fearing, you pause. And in that pause, the inner recognition returns not as thought but as awareness. The Lord is in this place, and because he is, no other power need be consulted. This pause is not delay. It is alignment. It is the moment when the personal will steps aside and divine order resumes its government. Many mistakes are avoided not because we become wiser, but because we become stiller. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Proverbs 3-5. To lean not on understanding does not mean to abandon intelligence. It means to stop letting the human mind sit on the throne of consciousness. As this way of living unfolds, you may notice that problems no longer command immediate attention. They are seen, but they are not believed. They are acknowledged, but not obeyed. They are met not with resistance, but with recognition. You may also notice something else. Compassion deepens. Judgment softens. The need to correct others fades. Why? Because you begin to see that everyone is acting from their level of awareness, just as you once did. And you realize that the same presence that governs you governs them, even when it is not yet recognized. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. John 7:24. Righteous judgment is not condemnation. It is seeing through appearances to spiritual reality. Living this way does not mean you become passive. On the contrary, action becomes more precise, more effective, more timely. You say less, but what you say carries weight. You do less, but what you do bears fruit. There is a quality of rightness that accompanies your movements because they are no longer driven by fear or ambition. This is the life that Jesus lived. He walked through crowds without haste. He slept in storms. He waited when others panicked. He moved when the hour had come and not before. He was not guided by circumstances, but by consciousness. The Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. John 5:19. Seeing the Father is not vision. It is awareness. It is knowing when to act and when to remain still. And so, beloved, do not try to hold on to what has been revealed. Holding is effort. Clinging is fear. Simply return again and again to the inner pause. Let silence be your companion. Let recognition be your refuge. Over time, you will discover that the session never ends. Life itself becomes the practice. and the Christ no longer sought is lived. Beloved, we come now not to a conclusion, but to a resting place. For truth is never concluded. It is only recognized. And when it is recognized, there is nothing left to say. All that needed to be said has already been said, not in words, but in the silence that has accompanied them. The mind may remember phrases, ideas, scriptures, but the soul remembers something else entirely. It remembers the presence. It remembers what has always been true. Be still and know that I am God. This is not a command. It is a revelation. Stillness is not demanded of you. It is invited. Knowing does not come from effort. It dawns when effort ends. There is nothing you must carry away from this moment. Nothing to practice. Nothing to achieve. Nothing to demonstrate. The belief that something must follow is itself the last illusion to fall away. God is not at the end of a spiritual journey. God is the ground upon which the journey was imagined. He that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. Dwelling is not visiting, dwelling is abiding. And you have never been absent from that dwelling, even in your moments of doubt, fear, or confusion. If there is healing yet to appear, it will appear. If there is harmony yet to unfold, it will unfold. Not because you have earned it, not because you have remembered enough truth, but because truth is law, and law fulfills itself without permission. My grace is sufficient for thee. Sufficient, not added to, not supplemented by human effort. Sufficient. Do not look back upon what has been said. Do not look forward to what may happen. Rest now in the simple awareness that I am, not as a phrase, not as a declaration, but as being itself. If thoughts come, let them come. If silence remains, let it remain. If peace is felt, receive it. If nothing is felt, trust it. God does not reveal himself through sensation. He reveals himself as certainty without reason, as peace without cause, as presence without form. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. And now you see you were not searching for God. You were searching for rest, and rest has found you. So we do not close with words. We close with stillness. We do not end with instruction. We end with recognition. That which heals is here. That which governs is here. That which you have sought is here, and it always has been.